Rachel didn't wake up one morning planning to destroy her budget. She didn't sit down and decide to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a room she barely uses. She simply wanted to fix something small that annoyed her every single time she walked past it. It was a faucet in her guest bathroom, slowly dripping and quietly reminding her that it was overdue for replacement. The finish looked outdated, the handle felt loose, and the problem felt harmless. This didn't feel like spending money, it felt like being responsible. When Rachel found a brushed nickel faucet on sale for $147, she felt proud of herself. This was the kind of decision financially smart people make. Cheap, practical, controlled, and easy to justify. She even watched a YouTube tutorial that promised the entire job would take less than an hour. 45 minutes, basic tools, no complications, no surprises. Everything suggested this would be quick and painless. At that moment, there was no renovation plan, no contractor, and no budget spreadsheet. There was no vision of matching finishes or full upgrades, there was just a faucet. 8 months later, Rachel had spent almost $38,000 on that same guest bathroom. Not the master bathroom, not the kitchen, but the guest bathroom, the one visitors use maybe twice a year. This didn't happen because Rachel was careless with money. It happened because renovations don't explode all at once. They grow slowly, quietly, and logically, one decision at a time. When the new faucet was installed, something subtle but powerful happened. The sink next to it suddenly looked yellowed, scratched, and cheap. Nothing about the sink had changed, only Rachel's perception. The faucet raised the standard of the room, and once the standard moves, your brain starts rejecting everything that doesn't match it. That discomfort doesn't fade, it demands action. So Rachel replaced the sink for $420. At the time, it still felt reasonable and controlled. She told herself she was just finishing what she started, but the new sink didn't fit the old vanity correctly. The proportions felt off, the edges didn't align, and the mismatch was impossible to ignore. The room no longer felt good enough. Replacing the vanity cost another $870. By this point, Rachel had already crossed her original mental budget, even if she hadn't admitted it yet. Stopping now felt worse than continuing. When the contractor removed the vanity, a new problem appeared. Water damage in the subfloor that had been hidden for years was suddenly exposed. This was no longer optional. Fixing the subfloor added $1,200 Rachel never planned to spend. At that moment, the idea of a cheap faucet replacement officially died. Once the floor was open, reinstalling the old tile felt ridiculous. Compared to everything new, it looked outdated and tired. Replacing the tile for $1,800 felt unavoidable. The new floor made the toilet look ancient overnight. It still worked perfectly, but visually it no longer belonged in the room. Another $650 disappeared. At this point, everything at floor level was new. And now the bathtub looked embarrassing by comparison. Yellowed caulk and outdated panels suddenly felt unacceptable. Replacing the tub, surround, and fixtures cost $7,200. The room had crossed a point where stopping felt impossible. Too much had already been invested. With everything else pristine, the wall color now looked dirty. Rachel repainted the room for $400, hoping this would finally be the last change. Then the lighting felt dim, the mirror looked cheap, and the hardware didn't match anymore. Each fix felt small on its own, but together they were devastating. Rachel started with a $147 faucet. She ended with a $38,000 renovation. And here's the part that still keeps her awake at night. Her house is not worth $38,000 more because of that bathroom. The real estate market simply doesn't reward renovations the way homeowners expect. According to industry data, mid-range bathroom remodels recoup only about 60% of their cost. The rest is permanently lost. Rachel added roughly $23,000 in value and lost around $15,000 on a room most guests barely notice or remember. My name is Edward, and I've spent months studying why renovations spiral like this. What happened to Rachel isn't rare, it's the most common outcome. The core mechanism is aesthetic dissonance. Improving one thing shifts your reference point and makes everything else feel worse by comparison. Once that reference point shifts, your brain demands consistency. And consistency inside your own home is expensive. This isn't about taste or discipline, It's about how human perception works under pressure and uncertainty. The most dangerous phrase in renovation is "while we're at it." It sounds logical, efficient, and responsible. It is none of those things. What makes this renovation trap especially dangerous is how reasonable it feels while it's happening. None of these decisions sound irresponsible on their own. Each step feels like the logical response to what has already been done. Your brain quietly reframes the situation as you go. The question stops being "should I spend this money?" and turns into "it would be stupid not to fix this now." That shift is where budgets silently collapse. Home improvement media reinforces is thinking every single day. Renovation shows and social media normalize total transformations and make partial upgrades feel unfinished or wrong. You start comparing your home to a fantasy, not reality. This creates social pressure on top of financial pressure. Even if no one ever sees your guest bathroom, you feel like it should meet an invisible standard. And that standard is expensive and always moving. At this stage, the renovation is no longer about comfort or function. It becomes about relieving psychological discomfort created by mismatch and comparison. And paying to relieve discomfort is how renovation costs explode. Every small decision feels justified in the moment, but the total becomes devastating. And unless you recognize this trap, it will happen again. Divisible money is only part of the cost. Renovations also steal time, energy, focus, and future flexibility. These losses are harder to measure, but far more damaging. While the bathroom was under construction, Rachel's routines were constantly disrupted. Small inconveniences piled up into daily stress. None of this showed up in the budget. Then there's opportunity cost. That $38,000 could have been invested, compounded, and grown over time. Instead, it's locked into tile and fixtures. Renovations also increase future expenses. Better finishes require more maintenance, more careful use, and more expensive repairs. People believe discipline will save them next time, that they'll stick to the plan. Almost everyone believes this before they start. The problem isn't discipline, the problem is uncertainty and psychology working together. Once a project is halfway done, walking away feels like failure. Some costs trap people into continuing. That's why reasonable people make irrational decisions during renovations. They're not stupid, they're human. Real protection starts with structure, not willpower. You have to design the process around your psychology. Any renovation budget must include a serious contingency, at least 30%. And that money should be treated as already spent. If you can't afford the project without touching the contingency, you can't afford the project at all. All decisions should be made before work begins. Mid-project choices are where budgets collapse. Renovate in isolation. One room, one boundary. When upgrades spread, aesthetic pressure multiplies. Renovate in isolation. One room, one boundary. When upgrades spread, aesthetic pressure multiplies. I've spent far too much time thinking about this, so you don't have to. If this changed how you see renovations, hit like and subscribe.